I'm Julie Pinsino, and I'm happy to serve this congregation as a member of your Board of Trustees. And thank you for joining us both in person and online. Please scan the QR code on the screen. There it is. And there's also one back there. To get a digital version of our order of service and find our donation page. If you're visiting with us for the first time this morning, welcome. We have a first-time visitor gift for you at the greeter stand, and one of our cherished volunteers will be available in Slaughter Lounge to share our getting to know you information for anyone who would like to learn more about who we are and what we believe here at First UU. We have a few announcements this morning. Covenant Group Facilitator training is today after the service from noon till 2. And everyone who signed up for Covenant Groups will be receiving emails in the coming week with more information. All are invited to join the SYC community for a special event. Heather Shoemaker, author of It's Okay Not to Share, will be visiting on October 25th at 6:30 p.m. to talk about wild emotions. All feelings are okay, all behavior isn't. We will also be honoring longtime SYC teachers and hosting an open house. This free community event is for adults only. Caregivers of young children, early childhood educators, and anyone who cares about children are encouraged to attend. And there are issue 1 and issue 16 yard signs available at the jam table. And now another announcement.
So thank you to everybody who was at the festival and the auction last night. Yay! Could I have the auction organizers stand, please, so that we can recognize you?
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Reverend Tracy, for introducing this, and what a wonderful time, everything. My name is Candy Rothard, and I'm the chairperson for the auction this year. And wow, where do I start? I promise I won't make this an Oscar-worthy length acceptance speech. So we raised $25,020 between the Fall Festival and the auction. Wonderful. There are so many people that I'd like to thank. As Reverend Tracy was starting to say, first I'd like to thank my fabulous auction team. If you're a part of the auction team, could you please stand up at this point and stay standing? Okay. I want to also thank our local business donations. We had several business donations this year and really wonderful items. If you were responsible for helping secure any one of these business donations, could you please help stand up this year? Stand up. Auction team, stand up, and anybody who helped secure business donations. I know the Greenmans helped and a couple other people, so keep standing. All right. If you donated something this year, if you donated something to the auction, please stand up. If you bid on something this year from the auction, please stand up. All right. Thank you so much for helping support the auction. You can sit down now. But you know what? This is not just about the auction, folks. This is also about the Fall Festival, and what an amazing, wonderful Fall Festival and hard-working job everybody from the Fall Festival did. If you were part of the planning team for the Fall Festival, helping set up the Fall Festival, anything, could you please stand up for the Fall Festival? Come on, Sarah. I know you helped, Sarah. Okay. Let's see. If you volunteered during the Fall Festival, if you helped anything at all during the Fall Festival, please stand up. I know there's lots of people who have volunteered during the Fall Festival. All right. If you went to the Fall Festival last night, please stand up. All right. Thank you, everybody. Yes. With the Fall Festival, we could not be remiss without thanking Andy. I didn't see her in here, but oh, she is. Oh, Andy, can you please stand up? Yep. And also, I want to give a huge shout out to Christine Davidson, because I know she was here really printing signs both for the auction and for the fall festival. But wait, folks, it is not over yet. There will be after sales. Woohoo! Yes, the good stuff will be up later today as soon as we get everything switched over, so keep your eye on your computer. The Fun Food and Frolic will be up later this week because there's a little bit more finagling with that we have to do so keep checking. It is going to be a buy it now for the after sales, so once it's bought, it's gone. And if you have any questions or would like to settle your bill, we will be out in the fellowship hall afterwards. Thank you all so much for all your support. We really appreciate it.
Good morning. I'm Amanda Hayes, and I use she, her pronouns. I serve as your justice minister. Our opening hymn is Over My Head, an African-American spiritual that has inspired generations of people fighting for liberation. It's number 30 in the gray hymnal, and the words will also be on the screen. Please rise as in body or spirit and join. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. There must be a God somewhere. And now we begin this service by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral lands of the Adena, Hopewell, Wyandotte, Miami, Seneca, Erie, and Cayuga people. We cultivate this awareness that concrete acts of solidarity, healing, and reparation accompany our symbolic acknowledgments.
The Reverend Dr. Teresa Cooley, and I serve as your developmental minister. My pronouns are she, her. And our opening words come from my colleague, Inez Santos. We gather, Unitarian Universalists, certain only of our power to be human, finding ourselves committed to keeping our word and being our covenant. And when we fail to keep our promises, we don't throw them away, labeled as impossible, we take up our courage. We begin again. We contain multitudes not just of questions and contradictions, but also of possibility. We continue to labor for the creation of community in which all of us, not just each, but every part of us, is welcome in this home of our faith. We hold on. So now is an opportunity for the children to go out to prepare to bring in the light. And I would like to invite everybody to rise as you're willing and able and greet one another and tell us why you're here this morning. It is lovely to be together. And now the children may bring in the light. Our chalice lighting words this morning come from Sarah Lawal. Out of the flames of fear, we rise with courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all there is and yet to be. And out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love, love that celebrates our shared humanity. Out of the flames, we rise.
Thank you, Sai, for helping us light our chalice. Alrighty. You may notice I am not Amber Scott, but Amber Scott is our Director of Religious Exploration. Today's story is called Where Are You From? Written by Yamil Said Mendez, and illustrated by Jamie Kim. Where are you from? They ask. Is your mom from here? Is your dad from here? They ask. I'm from here, from today, same as everyone else, I say. No, where are you really from? They insist. I ask Abuelo because he knows everything, and like me, he looks like he doesn't belong. Where am I from? Abuelo thinks. His eyes squint like he's looking inside of his heart for an answer. You come from the Pampas, the open, free land, he says. You're from the Guacho, brave and strong, from the brown river that cleanses and feeds the land, that gives us grain for our bread, the milk from the cows. You're from the mountains so high, they tickle Senor Quilio's belly, where the condor roosts his family and the jaguar prowls the night. But you're also from the warm blue oceans the copper warriors tried to tame, and the elegant palm trees stretch their fingers to caress. You're from the hurricanes and dark storms and a tiny singing frog that calls the island people home when the sun goes to sleep. From this land where our ancestors built a home for all, even when they were in chains because of the color of their skin. You're from the grandmothers who search for their grandchildren, waiting, always waiting in a plaza, their white handkerchiefs wrapping the sorrow of their thoughts. You come from the sunshine that lights our path in this world and the rain that washes away our mistakes. But, Abuelo, I ask, where am I really from? Abuelo laughs. You want a place? He points to his heart. You're from here, from my love and the love of all those before us. From those who dreamed of you because of a song sung under the Southern Cross or the words in a book written under the light of the North Star. You're from all of us. I am. The end. In this story, a young child's grandparent responds to microaggressions, relegating people of color as other, with beautiful poetry reflecting the full complexity of their existence. Today, as we examine our call toward anti-racism as Unitarian Universalists, may we consider the power of our words as we aspire to become more welcoming to all. And together, let us sing our young people back to their families and out to class. Within our arms we shelter you. You warm our hearts as you pass through. May our love guide you as you go, to help you learn and help you grow. In the month of October, we are sharing our plate with Pro-Choice Ohio and Faith Choice Ohio, two incredible organizations who protect the rights of pregnant people. Please use the QR code on the order of service, text the number on the screen, or go to our website, firstuu.org, and click the Donate tab to share as you feel called. Your gifts help build a better church and a better world. Thank you. Our offering will now be gratefully received.
We have some joys and sorrows to share this morning. Our deepest condolences go to David Wardlow and Heather Farina. David and Heather's mother, Sarah Lucky, died on Thursday, October 12th, following a hospitalization of just a few short weeks. Happy birthday to Marguerite Molk. Marguerite will celebrate her 97th birthday. All right. And happy birthday to David McDonald, who will celebrate his 87th birthday, also on Wednesday. And happy birthday to Kathy Elkins, who will celebrate her 80th birthday on Friday. We hold these and all other unspoken but no less significant joys and concerns in the love of community. And now please join me in the spirit of prayer, or meditation, reflection. Let us ground our bodies and open our spirits. As I share this poem by Jan Richardson, which reflects on the passage from Exodus, I will put you in a cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Believe me, I know how this blessing looks, like it is leaving you, like it is walking away while you stand there, feeling the press of every sharp edge, every jagged corner in this fearsome hollow that holds you. I know how hard it is to abide this blessing when some part of it remains always hidden from view even as it sees you from every angle, inhabits your entire being, calls you by your name. I know the anguish of vision that comes in such fragments, the terrible wonder of glory that arrives only in glimpses. So I am not here to make excuses for this blessing, for how it turns its face from us when we need to see it the most. But I want to believe it will always find its way to us when we are in the place made by cleaving, the space left by what is torn apart, even as it is joined in the fierce union that only comes in the fissure. I want to be unafraid to turn toward this blessing that binds itself to us, even in the rending, this blessing that unhinges us, even as it makes us whole. Amen.
Our reading today comes from Adrienne Marie Brown. It is in generating and sustaining the possibility of liberation, not just for us individually, but for a collective body, for a species. The daily practice of that generating and sustaining in the tunnel of justified hopelessness, that is what gives us options, a future. Neither violence nor victory within the current context is as dangerous to those holding unjust power as someone who knows. We are free and will continue to move and shape the world accordingly every day. We will now remain seated and sing our meditative music, number 1011, Return Again. The words are both in the teal hymnal and on the screen. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul.
It seems like October is the month when I have had some of my most profound and some of my most painful experiences. A few weeks ago, I shared that 4 years ago in October, I visited Israel and Palestine as part of a trip that had guides from both areas. And what I witnessed there changed me. I'll talk about that in a future sermon. But suffice it to say that watching the current conflict unfold feels like a physical pain to me. Along with many, I struggle for wisdom and answers, and I try to arm myself against despair. And it is a hard struggle. Also, in October 9 years ago, I went to Ferguson, Missouri as part of a clergy gathering to protest the brutal murder of Michael Brown. There were religious leaders of all kinds there that day, rabbis, imams, Catholics, Protestants of many traditions, and yes, 5 Unitarian Universalist ministers. We were being asked to consider acts of civil disobedience, and were being trained in how to stand firm when threatened by police. I had certainly participated in protest actions before, but they were all peaceful, and even when arrests were conducted with as much civility as possible. But this was something much different. The police that I normally think of as those who protect me in my white skin privilege were suddenly a terrifying apparition in my mind. We were asked to do something more than just stand. We were asked to approach a solid line of police blocking our path and ask them for their confession. This is the outline of Michael Brown's body. drawn where he had been left lying for 9 hours after he was shot. And here is a Baptist minister leading our approach to the police. Note the stony-faced man with the white hair behind him. You can imagine that asking for confessions is not my usual theological approach. But I was there to follow the lead of our local clergy. And so I swallowed my discomfort. I watched the African American woman to my left crying out in pain and anger to the cop in front of her, between gasping sobs, telling the story of her nephew who had been killed. She received a somewhat sympathetic smile, but no confession. The aged rabbi to my right was speaking reasonably and calmly to that stony-faced sheriff of how he believed God calls us to stand on the side of the oppressed. No response. I was lucky in who I was facing, the only policeman of color who had a gentle and concerned manner. I approached him and I asked him if I could offer him my confession, that we're all participating in a system that keeps us falsely divided and fearful of the other. And he agreed and spoke of how he was trying as hard as he could to change the system from within. This picture of our conversation was caught by the Huffington Post. As we were talking, suddenly the crowd started surging forward, pushing us against the line of police. Some of the cops backed away, but a few others, especially the stony-faced one to my left, started trying to grab people and throw us back, and I managed to get beyond his arms and move forward, only now to be facing a line of police who were equipped with riot gear, helmets, machine guns, facing clergy, facing rabbis and nuns and evangelicals, trying to speak to the love that our religions call us to. And by this time, it had started raining buckets. The crowd continued to press from behind us, and there was nowhere to go. The police in front were shouting to us to get back, and the crowd behind us gave us no room. I was terrified, and I felt exactly like I was in that cleft of the rock that Jan Richardson spoke about in our prayer this morning. My friendly policeman was urgently asking the leaders to take us back before someone got hurt, and I was terrified. So we did what we could do. We sang. We sang protest songs. We sang spirituals. We chanted and we prayed, and the police stared at us as if we were the enemy. And we looked back with the same fear. Finally, the leaders of the group realized the fruitlessness of this, and we were asked to regroup behind the lines. A few folks, including the renowned writer Cornel West, again pushed forward, asking to speak to the chief of police, and they were promptly and roughly arrested. The rest of us were drowned rats at this point and dejectedly left to return to our homes. Some of these clergy returned to the homes right there in that neighborhood where they knew they would face this yet again, awaken to the same reality the next day. And others of us, like myself, could return to our illusions of safety. I tell this story not to paint myself as a hero, but to share probably the most profound moment in my journey to be anti-racist. It is a journey that I have faltered on many times. I have stepped forward and then back, losing courage and commitment at any number of times along the way. I believe in the power of confession, not confession coerced, but the kind that makes you honestly examine your past behavior and face what you need to change. That's not always been the case. Earlier in my life, it was very hard for me to admit my mistakes and fallibilities. But I finally realized that, guess what? I am not perfect. And that when I can openly acknowledge how I have not lived up to my own standards, I can, strangely enough, find the courage to try again. It's not about abasing myself or humiliating myself, just an honest assessment. I've also learned that when I let go of my perfectionism and name my mistakes, it creates a space for me to connect with others, to reconnect with my own values, and move ahead with a new sense of commitment. The poet David Whyte talks about this beautifully in his self-portrait, in which he says, "It doesn't interest me if there is one God or many gods. I want to know you belong or feel abandoned. If you know despair or can see it in others, I want to know if you are prepared to live in the world with its harsh need to change you, if you can look back with firm eyes, saying, 'This is where I stand.' I want to know if you know how to melt into that fierce heat of living, falling toward the center of your longing. I want to know if you are willing to live day by day with the consequences of love and the bitter, unwanted passion of your sure defeat. I have been told in that fierce embrace, even the gods talk of God." It is in this sense that I believe confession to be a spiritual act. My call to ministry was intimately tied up with a call to justice. I tried to work out that call, as I've told you before, originally in electoral politics, and ultimately found it to be empty of the soul work that I believe is necessary to do justice. Ministry felt like the way to work with people's minds and hearts and souls, to go deeper than changing laws or policies ever could. And this call also led me to pursue ministries with congregations that had diversity in its constituents, believing that the beloved community must, of all things, be inclusive. And my first two ministries indeed were two of the more racially diverse congregations, in Detroit and in Chicago. When I pre-candidated for the Detroit church, I preached at an almost entirely white church in the suburbs. The people of color on the Detroit search committee would chat with people at the coffee hour after, and in almost every conversation, someone in that church would say, "You know, there's a Unitarian church in downtown Detroit where you might be more comfortable." I began to feel a bit smug that I would serve a church that didn't treat people that way. For a girl from a small town in Texas, simply living in those cities was an education in and of itself. The deeply rooted systemic racism that resulted in the near destruction of the city of Detroit was evident to me every day. The congregation was one of the few mostly white congregations that stayed downtown when most fled to the suburbs. That congregation was roughly 30% Black, and that was a source of pride, at least to the white folks. I learned of the fortitude it required of Black people to be in the midst of whiteness. A Black woman who had been a member of the church for 30 years said to me, "Whenever the white folks get crazy, I just go upstairs and volunteer in the church school." There's much more sanity to be found with the children. In Detroit, I worked hard to develop relationships with community organizations and justice groups and other Black churches. I believe I prided myself on this work to a point where it felt like I got it. I understood the nature of racial dynamics and thought that I was poised to help bring about change. The congregation had relatively few internal skirmishes over issues of race, so I hadn't had to confront the fallacy of my pride. Looking back, it is clear to me that the reason for this was that it was still a white church in which more than the usual number of Black people were willing to join us. I often wondered why. I shudder when I think of our 84-year-old white organist leading an all-white choir singing, "There is a balm in Gilead." The second church that I served in Chicago was another story. This was a time when so many of our congregations were trying to grapple with internal homophobia through the Welcoming Congregation program. It was important and difficult work, and it exposed long simmering frustrations and divisions among the people of color in the congregation. Why are we suddenly so concerned with welcoming gay people when we really still don't know how to welcome Black people? Was something that I heard often. I had hired a staff person who was Black and queer, and initially she and I enjoyed a dynamic working relationship. I knew I had a lot to learn from her, but again, I felt the hubris of feeling like I had arrived at a great understanding of Black people because we were friends. But as we went through the welcoming congregation process, it became clear to me, to her at least, that I really didn't fully get it. The complexity of being a queer Black person in this context left her feeling pulled in a multitude of directions, and I often expected her to be the emissary to the people of color, and she began to feel less and less understood and supported by me. I began to feel more and more betrayed by her. Didn't she understand what I had done for her? You can imagine how this goes from here. This and several other painful experiences I had around the same time with other Black friends and colleagues began to make it apparent to me that I still had learning to do, but the pain of those experiences overwhelmed my desire to learn, and I shut down. While I continued to do some racial justice work, internally I felt cynical and bitter and hopeless. Internally, I walked away from the work because, as a white person, I could. It took the murder of Michael Brown and Ferguson to wake me up to my abdication. When I was in that previously hardened place, I thought I knew what needed to happen and how it had to happen, that we all needed to see the intersectionality of injustice and just move ahead. But what I missed was the acknowledgement that needed to be made of the deadly impact of racism. What I missed was that I needed to realize I was part of the problem and make that confession. And what I've realized since then is that I was seeing racism as one issue among many that needed my attention. But what I see now is that racism is not just a social justice problem. It is an identity issue that I need to grapple with, that we need to grapple with. That by perpetuating so many of the practices of white supremacy culture, we cannot move into beloved community without that understanding. Like many white folks in our movement, initially I struggled with that language of white supremacy until I looked back at my own personal history that I just related to you. Because of course I was perpetuating white supremacy culture when I blithely assumed that I got it, when I thought I was one of the special white people that was different, when I patronized my friends and colleagues of color, when I thought they should appreciate all I had done for them. But what helped me turn a corner in this work was being privileged to work with Resmaa Menakem, the author of My Grandmother's Hands, as part of a workshop he led for ministers of large congregations. And he helped me to see that racism was not just an intellectual construct. Racism and white body supremacy creates embodied trauma for all of us, in different ways for bodies of color, but still trauma for white bodies as well. This understanding helped me to recognize all the ways I was putting up resistance that only made for what he calls dirty pain, and missing out on the ability to work through the clean pain of acknowledging and naming the damage that I and others have done and continue to do. It is work that has helped me understand that my primary job is to listen. There are still times when I get reactive about what a person of color may be trying to communicate to me, but when I finally realize that it's not about figuring out who was right or who was wrong, what was truth or not, instead, I try to hold myself in a place of learning before I react. What is it that I need to learn about this interaction, this person, that goes deeper than just words? The work that you have been doing and are continuing to do by engaging with Living the Pledge and considering the 8th principle can be difficult work to do. The words in the 8th principle can be inflammatory. We don't like to think of ourselves as white supremacists. That's those people over there. But the 8th principle invites us to sit with that discomfort, to learn how we may be acting, unconscious as it may be, out of our white body privilege. I've now worked with 2 congregations that have gone through this process, and I can tell you that it can be transformative if we can hold ourselves in a place of learning. For me, that means uprooting the deeply embedded racism in my heart and mind. It is ongoing work. I continue to make mistakes, but I am inspired to continue it with you as a community that is trying to commit yourself to the same work. It can be overwhelming at times, but I keep remembering the sage wisdom of the Talmud. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. For abandonment does not bring freedom. It becomes its own kind of prison. I choose to commit to staying in the messy and hard, but ultimately liberating and rewarding work of trying to create a world free of oppression in all of its forms. As Adrienne Marie Brown said in our reading, it is in generating and sustaining the possibility of liberation, not just for each of us individually, but for a collective body, for a species, the daily practice of that generating and sustaining in the tunnel of justified hopelessness, that is what gives us options, a future. So may it be. Amen. Please rise as you're willing and able to sing 1018 in your Teal hymn book, Come and Go With Me to That Land.
Come and go with me to that land. Come go with me to that land. Come go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom I know I was touched by Reverend Teresa's words, and I believe many of you were as well. No matter where we are in our journeys, we all have a lot of work to do to get free of white supremacy. And so here are some ways that we can work together starting today. One is, after you get your coffee, you can come back here to the worship center for a proposed eighth principle info session. And even if you can't come, one thing that you can do to help is to take our First UU proposed eighth principle survey. There's a link in the Friday news and a QR code around the building. And you can also sign up today for our next Living the Pledge anti-racism training on November 4th and 5th. The absolute deadline is next Sunday, but as soon as you sign up, you can get your binder to start preparing for the weekend intensive. It is work, and it is good work. This will be my third time doing this curriculum, and even just in preparing, I have been learning a lot yet again. You can sign up at the jam table, or you can use the link in Friday News. And now, again from Reverend Teresa Inez Soto. We are present, both in attention and in answer. We are here. We hold on. We contain multitudes, not just of questions and contradictions, but also of possibilities. We continue to labor for the creation of community in which all of us, not just each, but every part of us, is welcome in our home of faith. We hold on. And now we'll say our chalice extinguishing words together. We extinguish this flame, but not